Is this thing live? Welcome to the Beantown Podcast. This is Walter William Furness. This is my voice. This is what I sound like. We're coming to you live from 1506 West Arthur Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, where we are bathing, or perhaps basking, in the glow of a Minnesota Vikings win over the New Orleans Saints in the wild card round. Boy, it was a great wild card weekend. We got 2 overtime games. I think all 4 games were within 1 score. We were down at Redmond's today watching the game with a crowd of like-minded fans, and boy, it was the mood here is tense. It was tense at times. Man, there were a few moments where you really thought things were going to go south. Just like, for example, right from the beginning, that Adam Thielen fumble was not good, but we pulled it together, kept the hope alive. We're on to San Francisco. We're enjoying that. So it's going to be a lot of good stuff coming at you. This episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking year in review. So we got some recaps for you. We'll probably make some time for some ads. I don't know. We've got probably more talking about the Vikings. So buckle up. It's going to be great. And I don't know. I guess we're just going to keep stalling here until Quinn gets back. He's currently out walking his neighbor's dog. And I hear some barking outside. So hopefully things are going okay. Hopefully there's not an altercation or a run-in or a scuffle. You never know, though. A lot of activity up here in Rogers Park. So, I think he's back now. Quinn David Furness, welcome to the Beantown Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, man? Just won that Golden Globe tonight, and I did it myself. I feel a lot of good energy, and Margot Robbie's toes, man, they looked really good on the big screen, didn't they, man?
That was some live feed from earlier tonight on the Golden Globes. Hopefully there's no copyright problems there.
Yeah, we just spliced it right in.
Don't sue us.
Thanks to Walt for that introduction here. Got started without me. Wow, just kind of feels like a metaphor for life, It's like we were playing Catan when I was at my parents' house last week or the week before, and it was one of those games where, I'm fighting hard, scrapping hard to get that 5th point, and all of a sudden I look down at the board and I'm clear-cut last place. So, yeah, Catan is one of those games that I enjoy, and I've been playing it for, 10 years, whatever, and I feel like I figured it out, but my win percentage is pretty awful when it comes to that game. I don't know. I don't care enough to research next level strategy or anything online because I'm prideful and I feel like I have it figured out. But man, I've probably played 50 games of Catan in my life, and I can't recall winning more than 5 or 6 of them. So it's not my game. I don't know, but this is the show. This is the Beantown Podcast, joined by a lot of dogs scuffling outside. A lot of extracurriculars going on. This is our year 1 review, and I think it's pretty fitting that we're joined by brother of the podcast, Walter Furness. I don't know. This has got to be, it's not 2019 anymore, but it's still year 2. But I feel like this is at least your 4th appearance, maybe. We're going to be talking about one of them briefly on our recap. But then you were on only a couple weeks ago, around Thanksgiving-ish, I think. So Walt's been with us probably more than anyone else this year, so it's fitting that he'd come on to do the recap. Before we go any further, I'll let you know that listener discretion is advised when you're listening to Quinn David Furness Presents the Beantown Podcast. Number 1, we'll occasionally use some crazy language, and I got to admit, I got caught up in the heat of the moment a couple times at the bar today, and there were some let's effing goes, and boy, there was one play.
How about that sack fumble? Would you say then?
Yeah, that was good. I think I was in shock too much when that happened to say anything. But there was one third down play. It was like a swing pass to Kamara or something. I think I said, "Get his ass." Felt like I was auditioning for Get Out or something, man. And then I may or may not, after the Adam Thielen basket catch to get him down to the 3-yard line to set up first and goal in overtime, I may or may not have said finish them the something off. So it was fun. Well, how many? This is like one of those games where you count or have to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. How many people you think we had packed into that bar? And it's tough because we were only in half of it, but.
Yeah, you sort of walk in the front, and there's a bar right up front. You got kind of your narrow front area, and then you pass through the side, and then there's a whole back bar, which probably had to be more people in it than the front. And, man, I don't know. Don't think I'm very skilled at estimating crowd sizes, but I don't know. We could have had 250 in there maybe. I don't know. Felt like a good-sized wedding.
Yeah, I'd say that seems pretty accurate. Almost as many 250 is almost the number of F-bombs per minute in Uncut Gems, which we saw, which was a good movie. I'm glad it wasn't one of those movies with a lot of sex scenes, because when you watch those with your parents, it's just, man, and we're all old enough now to where I think no one minds it that much, but it's always fun. I remember I watched Risky Business one time with our mom, and I don't know why she didn't veto it, because I think she knew the movie. I had never seen it before. If you don't know Risky Business, after the first 5 minutes, which is Tom Cruise dancing to Bob Seger, it's basically just like it's like Weekend at Bernie's, but with a lot more prostitutes. It turns into kind of like a crime thriller. I don't know. It's strange. It's not a great movie. Everybody
knows it for those first scenes, I feel like, and you kind of forget about the rest.
Yeah, there's not much there, in my opinion. But I had a former roommate in college who tells a story of going to see Don John, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Scarlett Johansson movie from, I don't know, 2013, something like that, which if you don't know what that one's about, you're just going to have to Google it for yourself. So, speaking of movies, just a couple other pieces here, and then we're going to jump into our year in review, I promise, and we'll try to keep it short-ish. Don John is from 2013. That's clutch. Nice. We saw 1917 last night. Had to go all over Chicago to see it, because there's only one theater in the entire city, apparently, that has it.
You go down to like Sox 35th, and then you got to walk west a ways, and then there's like a back alley where you have to do a special knock to get in, I think, right?
Yeah, it was something like that, through the Lincoln Tunnel and past the Gumdrop Forest. Because I know, one of the movies we saw a trailer for said out, and it wasn't 1917, but it was another movie out December 25th, like limited release, and then everywhere January 9th. I'm wondering if 1917 has a similar structure. But the strange thing is a bunch of reviews, both like newspaper reviews, magazine reviews, YouTube reviews, came out in early December, like 3 weeks before December 25th, which isn't normal. So I still haven't quite got it figured out. I'm building a list of things I don't understand, like a Coldplay B-side. 1917 release date, Staten Island, and the East African restaurant by the Dunkin' Donuts on North Clark Street.
Have you talked about that in the podcast?
I don't know.
Yet? You got it at some point.
Yeah. Well, someone remind me to talk about that next week or something.
Put it in the comments below.
Through. Yeah. Like, subscribe, smash that share button if you don't mind. But yeah, 1917 was fun. Walt, you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, a few thoughts right off the bat. We were talking a little bit afterwards, and I don't know how much we'll talk about what transpired post-movie.
Just keep
but
going,
yeah, for now, I'll leave that for now. But the movie itself was really impressive in a couple of different ways, and one of them was that I think there was only one really obvious cut in the entire about 2-hour film. I imagine there were a few other places where if I were directing it, not that I ever would be, I would probably put in a cut. But suffice it to say, the scenes were really long between cuts, and the way the camera kind of continuously moved, and the sort of really long stretches of both dialogue, but also just sort of affect and mannerisms that these two lead actors, George McKay and like Charles Dean something, can't remember the other guy's name, but these two guys had to handle, and then of course all of the supporting cast around them was really impressive. So long stretches of really good acting, the set design incredible. We had a little sort of confusion about where exactly it was filmed. I think we got that figured out later, but because the camera is kind of moving constantly, the tracts of land that are covered in these shots is really impressive. So there was a lot of really great stuff in there, and then of course, as part of all this was just the cinematography and really interesting shots, and I felt like it gave a very disquieting but a very good sort of portrayal of kind of the desolation of the battlefield and the horrors of war. So a lot of good things to say about it. Don't have any real serious criticisms of it so far.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, 1917 is the sequel to Steven Spielberg's War Horse, this time directed by Sam Mendes. It's pretty much two guys running across, filmed in England and Scotland, but set in France for 2 hours. And I was doing some reading just about the production, and Sam Mendes, the director, said that shots in the movie ranged from 6 seconds to about 7.5 minutes. So there are a lot more cuts than what we realized, but I think modern technology probably helps out in some ways, in addition to just the places where you can make a strategic cut without people noticing. So, lots more cuts than you notice one, obviously, and it makes sense because the movie advances multiple hours during that cut. But, overall, really strong. Definitely go see it when you get the chance. You might have to drive across a few states to get to a theater that has it, but it's may or may not be worth it depending on gas prices in your local area. Afterwards, so we were actually watching the film with a couple friends, my buddy Matt McIntyre, and then host of the Local Gold podcast, Tarek Shahada, and he'll come up in our year review in just a second here. But I don't know. I don't even really know how to comprehend this. I feel like a Saints fan talking about the game today.
We never did turn on that New Orleans radio afterwards. That would have been fun.
Maybe we can do that after this. So we're there's four of us. We're having two separate conversations, and I think you and Tarek are just standing there. We're at right at the exit. Probably gonna leave in a couple minutes, or at least make plans for what we're about to do. And this African American gentleman, who I would pin at around 30 something, somewhere in his 30s, comes up, and I don't even, the whole interaction, because it was just so like nothing I'd ever done before. I don't even remember how the conversation started. He said
kind of bizarre. He made a comment about
my Vikings hat, I think.
Yeah, and also he was like pointing at our shoes or something, but I didn't understand what he was asking us.
The only thing odder than that was the 7-Eleven cashier today. What did he say? What's your profession?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, and he's like, no, what's your profession? And I was like, well, I work at a law school. And we were having two separate conversations, man. We haven't looked it up yet, but apparently it's a quote from 300.
Yeah, he was like, from 300. And we were like,
I was like, man, that movie's like 16 years old, bro. The only thing I know from 300 is when he says, this is Sparta, Gerard Butler, and he kicks him into the pit or whatever. That's 300, right?
Yeah, I think so. I never actually saw it.
And I know they're very different, but sometimes I get 300 and Sparta just conjumbled in my head. Wait, I don't think you can pick up the sync. We're all
very
over the place right now. I
active tonight.
apologize, but my sync is crazy. Yeah, Sparta is the Brad Pitt Orlando Bloom movie, I think.
Wait, are you thinking of the Troy?
Troy is what I'm
Yeah,
thinking. Sorry, not Sparta.
There isn't one called Sparta, right?
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. There will be.
Yeah, Troy. Apologies. I get Troy and 300 mixed up. I know they're different. And 300 it's a very distinct visual look. Is that directed by who's the guy that did like the new Batman movie or like the Superman movie?
The one where
Zack
it has
Snyder. I think he did 300.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Anyways, do you want to pick up the story regarding this young African American gentleman?
I'll try. So yeah, he made his intentions somewhat clear after the first few seconds that he was kind of talking fairly quickly in a very kind of loquacious manner. So he slipped in. I heard him slip in something about how he wanted. He was going to do something for us, and that basically like he would welcome / ask for donations. But he sort of then he proceeded to ask about our favorite rappers, and before we could even answer, he said, "Say someone old school." And I think I ended up saying that I like Chance. I wasn't really sure how to answer, but then he I don't know, he not sure if he even got a response from anyone else. He launched into this lengthy, can only describe it as lengthy.
Reminded me of the first half of 1917. No cuts.
No cuts. Yeah, he went for about probably 7-8 minutes without a cut.
More than that, I think.
Well, I mean, in total longer maybe, but a couple of times, so he starts rapping, and, I don't think either of us are well positioned to accurately judge the quality of someone freestyling, but he kept going. There were a lot of cultural references packed in. It kind of felt like American Pie or something. They're just coming at you so fast, and the Don McLean song I'm talking about. They're coming at you so fast you can't really process everything. And then after a while, he kind of stopped and like turned his back to us, walked away a few steps. Then after a pause, came back. I think the walk away happened twice total.
At least, yeah.
So you put those all together, about 12-ish, maybe plus minutes later, we finally pretty much had to say like, "Hey man, thanks, that was awesome. Like we actually got to get going." At this point, Matt had already left.
Yeah, our one friend we didn't see him again. He was gone.
Yeah, he was, I don't know, he was in the bathroom or standing off to the side or something when this started, so he didn't get kind of like caught in the circle of eye contact. So, anyway, yeah, eventually kind of had to just, let him know that we appreciate it, but we are on our way, and a couple of us, found a little bit of change for him. But, yeah, he was just...
Well, the thing that killed me was
it?
you paid him a little bit, and Tarek was generous with what he gave, and I didn't have any small bills, and I just... Plus, I don't know. I feel kind of bad, but also like didn't ask for this and I didn't want it either. The thing was, they gave him a couple donations, and then he went for another 5 minutes or so. We thought we were good to go, but yeah, it was. I don't know if he had any sort of mental anything, but so I'm not gonna disparage him in any way. But it was a lot
unexpected. In a lobby. I didn't see that
in the
coming.
lobby of a AMC in River East.
Yeah, and there were a bunch of people there, and somehow you found us. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. That Vikings hat. Well, this weekend there were a lot of comments between the Vikings hat, and then we decked out in gear today when we went to Redmond's. Lent Walt a sweater, which looked like Boo from Monsters Inc. wearing that thing.
Pretty accurate.
And I wore a purple suit with a vest and a yellow / gold tie and my Vikings hat, and got a lot of comments, mostly positive ones, although I think there was an FU from somebody driving on Clark.
Yeah, they had their window down and were like, "FU Vikings" or something. Like, well, you lost, so.
Yeah, I don't really know, other than if you were a Saints fan, like if there's anybody else out there who was like, "Oh man, the Vikings won." I don't think Bears fans really care that much. They're too busy
they're too busy soul searching and thinking about Matt Nagy.
I don't know what Bears fans are doing right now because the Bulls are
and the Blackhawks
and then the DePaul Blue Demons, who I've been in my info sessions at work being like, and it's one of my new jokes, and we actually have the best sports team in the city right now, and we also just lost to Providence.
I got to write some new material now. Yeah, I mean, if you are a Chicago sports fan, which, I think we're Vikings fans, but we still, try to appreciate and root for most of the Chicago teams, man, it's like everybody's in tank mode out there.
Well, I heard Whitney Young's Winter Bowling League is supposed to be pretty competitive this year, so we'll keep our eyes on that. I don't know, anything else before we jump into a little year one recap? 21 minutes into the show. Yeah,
man, crazy. Time flies. That pretty much sums up the last decade, but
you haven't started that part yet, man.
Well, I thought I'd tease it a little bit. I guess I'll just add, you were talking about the one disgruntled fan who yelled at us while we were waiting for the bus, but I'd say probably 4 or 5 to 1. We had a bunch of random strangers like congratulating us, and even people who weren't wearing Vikings gear today after the game. So that was pretty cool. Makes you feel like, hey, maybe not everybody's just trying to root for everyone else to lose. So that was nice. And what else? Yeah, I don't know. This probably isn't even worth mentioning, but a couple nights ago we played some trivia.
I was just going to mention something from that.
Yeah, it was tough, but there were just two of us, just myself and Quinn. We put up a respectable showing, I think, but it was very challenging. There were a couple of rounds that we kind of zeroed on, and that just wasn't going to cut it. What are your recollections?
You know that song, Just the Two of Us? I don't remember who did it originally, but Will Smith did a famous cover. Just the two of us. And the lady comes in. Just the two of us.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know, honestly.
What I was going to say about trivia is I thought I'd try something fun on this episode. And what I'm going to do is give you the very last question of trivia, and then I'll reveal the answer at the end.
I like it.
You have two choices. You can listen to the whole thing. It's by Grover Washington Jr. What a straight G. You can either listen to the whole podcast and you'll get the answer at the end, or you can Google it right when I say it. But instant gratification's not all it used to be. Okay, here's the question, and hopefully I word it correctly. In the 2010, so this is movies that came out from 2010 through the end of 2019, which does 1917 count? We don't really know.
Questionable.
Still have to determine that. Movies that came out in the 2010s, there were 38 that grossed over $1 billion worldwide. This is the film with the shortest title by character count. Not like, what is it, Tiptoes, that movie with Matthew McConaughey. What's it called? It's about little people. Gary Oldman in the role of a lifetime. You know that movie, right?
Boy, I'm not sure.
It's Matthew McConaughey, Gary Oldman. In the trailer, it says Gary Oldman in the role of a lifetime. And it's Kate Beckinsale, I think. It's I'm pretty sure I've showed you the trailer before, but we can watch it after this. Yeah, it's basically Matthew McConaughey is dating Kate Beckinsale. Yeah, it's got Peter Dinklage in it. And Kate Beckinsale finds out that Matthew McConaughey comes from a family of little people, and it's a drama.
Yeah, okay, you have shown me this. I forgot about that.
And then Kate Beckinsale gets pregnant, and you don't know. It's got Patty Arquette, too. You don't know if it's going to be a tall person, a little person. It's really
a bizarre movie.
A crime thriller. Let's see. Debuted in a... listen to this. This is indicative of some issues. There's a 150-minute director's cut that they released at the festivals, and the actual theatrical cut was 90 minutes. I don't know what the math is on that. I think it's like 60% of the film, though, is left after the cut. Wow. That's a lot. Peter Jackson couldn't even do that. if you haven't, last thing before we jump in, I promise you, if you haven't seen the trailer for Tiptoes, go watch it.
Do yourself a favor.
You'll think it's a joke. The Wikipedia page starts Tiptoes, also known as Tiny Tiptoes.
Is that really necessary?
You gotta go see the trailer for this. It's 2 minutes. It's totally worth it. That's all I'll say. You're missing out if you choose not to watch it. This is our year 2 recap. And I was thinking, we would not have it be as long as the year 1 special, which was 4.5 hours or something. But at this pace, oh man,
that one you had to I don't know, get a catheter or something just to make it through.
Yeah, we're going to need Walt to go get some coffee from Dunkin' pretty soon here. We'll move through this pretty quickly, I promise. But that's where we'll start with our year 2 recap. So although officially at the end of year 1, as you would expect, the year 1 special was a big project of ours. As a reminder, I went to an Airbnb kind of right on the border of Virginia and West Virginia over New Year's Eve. And all I really did there was hike, and I saw Vice on New Year's Eve. But the best part of the story was the ad on Airbnb says that there's a kitchen with a working stove, and I thought this place is perfect. I get there, and there's no kitchen. There's one of those little pancake griddle things that you plug into the wall. And the first time I tried using it, I actually blew the fuse, and I was down to 1 or 2 outlets the rest of the time I was there. And I knew the fuse box was behind this horse picture in the bathroom, and I found it after some digging, but I could never get it right. I think I must have blown a socket or something. So I had stopped on the way, because I drove out there from Beantown. I had stopped on the way in Aldi, which is, when you find one of those, it's like when you're playing Motherlode and you find a ruby at 500 feet. You got to take it.
Oh, yeah.
Aldi's got some great prices, particularly on pizza. You can get one of those just jumbo, it's 16 or 18 inches cheese pizza for, I swear, $5, which seems hard to believe in this day and age, but it exists, I can assure you. So I grabbed one of those thinking, pop this in the oven or the whatever I thought was there. And it's just this little pancake griddle. So you know the story. I told it a year ago, but I cooked frozen pizza one slice at a time on a frying pan on this pancake griddle. And it wasn't very good. It kind of curls up at both ends, the crust and then the tip. And the bottom is really hot, but the top isn't really cooked. And it was just one of those things where you're eating it and you're like, this is awful, but this is what I have for myself. So, but while we were doing that, we edited the year 1 special, potentially the last great feat of my MacBook Pro, which we're recording on right now, and it's actually been 2019 was actually really good. We did the surgery on Christmas Day, and then edited the year 1 special, which was at times extremely painful, but this year it's been good. It's kind of just like a glorified Netflix watcher at this point and streamer of sports, but yeah, she's doing all right. Better than my work computer, which crapped out right before Christmas break, and tentatively we have it back now, but rambling a lot. The year 1 special, 4.5 hours. What I like about it is it's all time stamped, so you go into the comments, you find the things you like, skip over the things you don't like, and it's a lot of fun. And as we kind of get into talking about year 2 here, I want to say this, and I was just literally an hour ago going through, not listening to episodes, but reading episode titles and descriptions to find some of the things I want to highlight in this recap. And I think I felt at times year 2 is just really awful, especially compared to year 1, and I felt uninspired at times, and played like Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football sometimes. But going back through the recap, it's I still feel like it's not as good as year 1, but it's different, and there were still lots of fun moments and lots of things that I had forgotten about. Oh man, I wanted to say one other thing. I don't know if it was about Kirk Cousins or something that actually mattered, but it started off in January. when got a fun email to the Beantown podcast account from a Mr. Rock Chris. You may remember this story. Your classic Nigerian guy. I don't know if he claimed to be a prince or whatever, but I had a sneaking suspicion that this was Chris Rock's code name. We never did receive any confirmation on that, but we went back and forth with Rock Chris through many emails, and I pulled a little, I don't know, what's a good phrase for when you pull a switcheroo?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I know what you want to say, I think, but you kind of turned the tables on him.
Yeah,
and it was
I gave the gander a goose.
Okay, I'll throw it out. Here's some easy bait for all the white people listening to this podcast,
Which is everybody.
Yeah,
Pete Buttigieg over here with African Americans.
In The Office, the marijuana episode where Dwight's, all uptight about finding the joint in the parking lot. He conducts this investigation throughout the office. Abby's already finishing my sentence here, I'm sure. Jim kind of turns the tables on him and tries to convince. Marijuana is a
memory loss drug.
Yeah, exactly. So, exactly how much pot did you smoke, Dwight?
No, you said I'd be conducting the interview when I got in here.
Yeah, that's the one. So that was what it was like, I feel like.
Oh, how the turntables. Not from that episode. But basically, I was looking to set up I don't remember what the metal was, but some sort of precious metals or minerals mine near State College, Pennsylvania, which was closer to where I was living at the time. And I just needed some funds for kind of the initial investment. And Mr. Rock Chris was not happy with this. We exchanged maybe one or two emails after that. Eventually, he ghosted me, so it ended up like most of my relationships in life. Yeah. Cue the sad sound.
Too bad. Yeah. We don't have the sound effects yet, but
yeah, they were playing that at the bar.
You could always add that in post.
I could. I won't, but I could.
How about the first down sound?
Low quality. That's all right. Next, and this was our second annual, and we're gearing up for our third annual here, our Pledge Drive Telethon fundraiser. This was exciting. We decided to turn February, instead of just having one episode be kind of the episode, we decided to turn February into Pledge Drive Fundraiser Month. And I think we hit our goal of something like $220 before the month even started, perhaps. It was wild. But that was really exciting and really encouraging. We're going to do that again this year. We're going to introduce some new donor incentives, and I think the one that everybody wants is where I ship you an autographed picture of my, well, maybe they don't want it, but I send it to them anyways.
There's a distinction.
And we got a new picture this year. Last year was a cowboy. If you have one on your fridge right now, give it a little wave. There's a camera in there, and it's been watching you all year. So we got another one of those coming to you, and the camera has better tech as well. So that's exciting for everyone. But with that, whatever, 210, 220, whatever it was, we launched beantownpodcast.com, which was a big get for us, and we'll have some announcements about that coming up in February, Pledge Drive Month. The best thing, I think, was that we launched the Beantown blog, which was it's still going, an amalgamation of a lot of different things. You got some movie reviews on there. You got some kind of Beantown throwbacks. We told the parking girl story, but in writing for the first ever time, and then just some weird things as well, like +1s at weddings and surprise parties hurt people. Although Walt had a surprise party this year, and I don't think anybody significant was left out.
Hope not.
That's always I think when you have an SO planet, it's a little bit better than just a friend planet, because if the SO typically has a pretty good sense, especially for you guys who've been dating for like 17 years or whatever, have a pretty good sense of who the friends are across the board, whereas one friend might not know who all the friends are, because I certainly don't know who all of my friends' friends are. And I don't think that's a very normal thing anyways. But look ahead, or look. We will be looking forward, to the third annual Pledge Drive Telethon fundraiser, and as promised, we'll be doing it over video, which is exciting. And thanks to a suggestion from brothers of the podcast, Walt and Jack, we're probably going to get a rotary phone for that episode.
Oh yeah,
which is really exciting. We've never had anyone call in live, but I think this is going to be the year. We got to find a way to live stream it, which is probably why they haven't called in yet. I get like 2 calls a year, so the statistical odds of it happening during that half hour are, well, we'll do the calculations later. We did our first ever State of the Podcast 2019. Well, it'll be the last time we did a State of the Podcast 2019. If we do it again, I was thinking about this the other day. Is there going to be a State of the Union this year? Because it's pretty early in the year, but Trump's also impeached. So I don't know. Because doesn't Nancy get to decide a lot of aspects of that?
The speaker has to invite the president, I think, technically, to give the State of the Union. I actually thought I heard something recently in the news that she did extend that invitation again. He, of course, has to accept and all that. But we'll see.
Yeah, it was interesting when that happened. I think State of the Union's on a Tuesday night typically, and when it came around this past year in 2019, I think I remember finding out about it on a Tuesday morning, the Tuesday morning of the State of the Union speech, and I had not made any prior plans to record a special of any kind. So I wrote a speech that ended up, I don't know, it's on YouTube. I think it's like 10 or 12 minutes, and then, dolled up my kitchen and gave the State of the Podcast speech with some inspirational, freedom-inspired music in the background, which was exciting. I'll also mention this isn't specific to the podcast, but speaking of recording yourself in your kitchen, that Oscars monologue last year was a whole lot of fun. People have asked, and whenever someone says people have asked or said, that means no one has actually asked or said, if I'm going to do that again this year. I haven't thought about it, but I will need to think about it soonish, considering it's like 35 days away. So, I don't know. We'll see. It was a lot of fun last year. I actually wrote the jokes mostly while I was running, and I haven't thought of any yet, but I'm sure I could get a solid 30 seconds of material if I just sat down and started talking about it. But in that vein, speaking of the Oscars, we brought on our Oscars specialist, Ryan Austin English. He kicked our asses in predictions again. I don't know what the final tally was. I think he finished at 18 or 19, something like that, out of 24. And he's always a lot of fun to have on, and we'll talk about Ryan at the end of this show again when we get around to the end of 2019. We also brought on friend of the podcast, Matt Fiedler, for the second straight year, although he comes on all the time. He is our tax expert, our tax specialist. This year we talked about the top 10 things the IRS doesn't want you to know, and we never actually talked about that. It was just a catchy title.
Well, now you got this year's planned out.
I guess. This year, Matt had it easy. We let him off easy in year 2 with the taxes because there really wasn't anything that interesting with my taxes. But this year I moved states, moved jobs, and had a lot of money come in under the table that I may or may not want to report on the counsel of Matt Fiedler. He's also my lawyer, so he doesn't know it yet, though. He does a lot of double duty. Technically, I can't say he's my lawyer because he doesn't have a JD. He hasn't passed the bar, so technically I didn't say that. It just... Well, I just have to check the tape.
Given the way things go these days with Rudy, I think you're fine.
I hope so. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through my phone here looking at things I wrote down. Walt, this next one concerns you. You may remember probably back in March or April there was a job opening for the assistant basketball coach at Northwestern University. We wrote a little cover letter.
That was a good one. That was... Wait, I was thinking... Was that when we were in New York? I thought we wrote that when we were in No,
okay. That was in Baltimore.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That was when I was visiting in Baltimore. I had a conference in D.C., and I came by the weekend for the weekend. So, yeah, that was great. man, you ever think about putting that out there on the Beantown blog?
Oh, that's on the blog, I think.
Oh, okay, right on.
I'm pretty sure it is. If not, we'll publish it. But yeah, if anyone's curious, 'cause I don't know if I ever said one way or another, I did not send that to Jim Phillips. I just figure, as an alum and someone who actually goes back there frequently, I didn't want to get banned from campus or anything. So, that's something I think about. People who get kicked out / banned from baseball stadiums or something. Do you think those people go back? Because I feel like I would go back all the time and not really worry about it.
I'm sure there's lots of belligerent people who probably relish going back.
I'd probably get one of those Mr. Potato Head disguises with the black mustache and the glasses, and that would
just
be
go all Gene Parmesan on them.
A little Martin Mull reference.
The way the Northwestern men's basketball team is playing so far this year, I think you might want to send in your application. Holy cow. Jens Notstead, if you're listening, please move back to Chicagoland. You could probably start.
Yeah, I think he's out of NCAA eligible. Well, actually, I don't know how that works, because you see people playing grad school, so it might have nothing to do with the degrees you've earned.
Yeah, I will. I think you could. I'm not an expert on this. I feel like you could probably. Yeah, I think you could. You'd have to enroll in some kind of program. There's probably, Morty could probably work some magic
classes. Exactly.
And man, yeah, I think as long as you haven't used it yet, it's still out there, kind of like a 529 plan.
Yep. I think if you haven't used it, if you haven't played professionally, and as far as we know, Jens never did get that Chinese basketball contract signed. So, yeah, still eligible. Jens is, I can 99% guarantee he's never listened to an episode. But
I'm sure
if this is the one, and if he finds himself on minute 41 chiming in right now.
The phone lines will be open at some point in the future, just not yet.
Let's see, plowing ahead here. We're going to hit the hour mark in this podcast. Oh, well, apologies.
Go get a snack.
Yep. We went to Kansas City, and I was there for work, and I loved it. I think that was my first time, definitely as an adult, ever being in Kansas City. But, while you're down there, you get a lot of good kind of Southern Christian sermons and preachers on the both FM and AM radio. And so shortly after that trip to Kansas City, I call it God's country, Easter rolled around, and 2 years ago I can't do it that way anymore. I'm sorry. I got to really be in the zone, and it helps if I...
KC's got to stand for something, something Christ or King Christ City.
Christ. It's like King's Cross in England. Easter came around shortly after that, and 2 years ago for Easter, I had worn my purple suit, which I actually put on today for the first time since Easter 2017. 2017, is that 2018? Getting my years mixed up here. So I want to do something special for the podcast, and I was feeling really inspired, really guided by the Lord, in all caps, Lord. Not your favorite pop singer from, I don't know, where's she from? Britain, Oklahoma, the Caribbean? I don't know. She's got that real kind of voice. I'm submitting that Lord impression to the Academy for some sort of award. We gave a sermon, which I wrote myself. It was about half an hour long. It's the first ever sermon I've ever written. I actually think it's not a half bad sermon. But seriously, I'm going to listen to it again this year. Maybe we'll do that again if I feel inspired. I don't know. I'm going down to Edwardsville. That's probably as close to the South as I'm going to get before Easter this year. But it was a lot of fun. I was actually pretty proud from just a sermonological perspective. Sermonological, SERMONOLOGICAL.
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Felt like Raj Patel at the spelling bee there. It's good. All I'm saying is, if you want a fun sermon that doesn't, it poked fun at Southern Christians and evangelical Christianity here and there, but I think there were actually some nuggets in there that would have made Joel Osteen proud. You get to minute 44.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well, it's a good thing for the ratings.
Yeah, it's a good thing for that group, I guess.
Yeah. Moving ahead here, we continued a tradition that we started in year 1 of the podcast with our top 10 horse names. And just so you know, Walt, I'm going to come to you in 1 second asking you for one of your best horse names. This year, 2017, our number one horse, no, 2018. It's 2020 right now. It's crazy. 2018, our number one horse name was still my overall number one horse name. It's the one I always go to, and I think it's on my Bumble profile. Episcopalian. This year, number 1, continuing with the religious theme, it was Pentateuch. Pentateuch, Pentateuch. It's not one of those a cappella bands. It refers to the first 5 books of the Jewish Bible. Pentateuch was this year's number 1 horse name, and for the full list of our top 10 horse names from 2019, excuse me. This is rough. We're just going to say year 1, year 2, year 3 from now on. You can go listen to the full episode. So, Walt, we'll turn it over to you. I know you only had about 30 seconds to think, but excuse me.
Wow, that's raw.
Mercy. There were some carnitas in there. Supper. What are you thinking right now in terms of a top horse name?
I feel like I'm in between a couple. You kind of got me on this one. The first thing that came to my mind, which is admittedly not as original as I'd like it to be, was Equanimous Valdez Scantling. Thought it was, a nice little tribute to the Packers wide receivers, and also sounds like it was, one time like an iron works or something.
Sure.
So that was sort of the first thing that came to my mind. I was trying to think of something else. Did you? I know it was I think it was in the top 10, but one of the ones that was on your list, which I loved, was like the name of the English chap who like founded Singapore or something. Do you remember that?
Referring to Stanford Raffles.
Stanford Raffles, man. That's fantastic. I also thought, maybe you could name a horse like Malort or something.
That's good.
It's just zippy, real easy to say. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That was what I came up with.
Hey, that's not bad. This wasn't an episode, but a big get for the podcast. Beantown Buttons. If you haven't gotten yours yet, we still got about 99 of the 100 that we ordered.
Hey, there's one down in San Marcos, 98. Texas. So
they're flying off the shelves. Call now. 815-298-7200. Phone lines are open. Beantown Buttons. They say I heart Beantown on them. They're a lot of fun. You can travel with them past TSA. Figure that out. So you don't have to worry about that. They're fun. They're chic. You can put them either on your clothes or directly through your skin, whatever you want. May or may not have tried that. It reminds me of the time. Quick aside. I promise this will be quick because we got so much to get through.
Yeah, we've heard that one before.
There was. I don't think I've ever told the story on the podcast. There was a time growing up, but it was kind of like Avengers Endgame or something. It's later in the stages of growing up. I was probably, 14, 15, something like that. And my mom, who was on the podcast 2 weeks ago, thanks to Jane for coming on. We'll talk about that at this rate in about 4 hours.
Maybe we will hit the 4-hour mark.
Yikes. I'm trying to think what the longest podcast we've had is other than that one. Probably around 100 minutes, something like that. Probably one of the Oscar specials. 24 categories. Mom had jammed the stapler, and it was a real heck of a jam. And I don't recall why, but I was being blamed for it. One of those situations where I just have absolutely nothing to do with it. So I felt kind of pressured to make it work because, if you don't have your stapler, you really can't function as a family. So I was, late at night sitting down in the schoolroom, which was in our basement growing up, and just fiddling around with it. And it was a real sticky jam, like you could buy at a, produce section or something. Although if your jam's in the produce section, you might want to check where it came from. And next thing I know, just moving more rapidly through the not so exciting story here, I look down and there's a staple completely in my thumb, which didn't hurt when it went in, but it hurt like a banshee coming out.
All the way in?
All the way in. Yep. Just, there's no scarring or anything, but yeah, completely in. Reminded me of the scene in UHF when Michael Richards is going at the bad guys with a stapler gun. I think I just pulled it out with my other hand, and I didn't waste any time. I was kind of freaked out. And there was a little bit of blood, nothing crazy, and I didn't get tetanus, which was good. But, yeah, first and fingers crossed last time I've ever stapled my thumb. It's pretty painful coming out, and I think just the shock aspect of it was extreme, too, for a little 15-year-old Quinn.
Yeah, facing your own mortality like that can be pretty scary.
Absolutely. We're getting, believe it or not, we're almost to the halfway point of year 2. Wow, that's exciting. We'll try to move a little bit more quickly here. One of my favorite stories, and something that I'm glad I'm doing this. It's as much fun for me as it isn't for you. Something I had forgotten about was literally, I think, either the night before or I don't remember exactly how it worked, but I had packed everything up and was, moving across, many, many states from the East Coast to Chicago. And so I'd eaten down pretty much everything in my apartment or packed up like dried goods that I was going to take with me. I had also, like a dummy, packed up all of my silverware. That's strike one. So, what's something you can make when you don't really have any ingredients, nothing fresh for sure. I decided to make crepes or little thin pancakes. And I said, okay, there's one thing that I really need to go to the grocery store to get because you really can't do it without it. I needed to get some butter. So I had flour, I had sugar, I knew I had some milk in the fridge. I don't know if, I had bought it 1 week ago or 1 month ago, but probably not a problem. And I think I had a couple eggs left too. So I'm at the grocery store, and I don't want to buy a full, 4 sticks thing because although it's a great Led Zeppelin song, it's not what I needed at this point in my cooking journey. So I just kind of don't pay much attention, grab 1 stick, get on out of there. That's all I needed. I go home, and I'm ready to make the crepes, and I realize the butter is some sort of garlic and herbs infused butter that one might use for cooking ham or broccoli or any steamed vegetable, really. But I'm thinking, how bad can it be? It's, butter's butter, right? So kind of strike 2. Well, I pull out the milk, and the expiration date was, I don't remember what, but not great. So we're playing with a bad hand here. I mix it all together, and I notice, boy, it really smells like garlic and herbs. And, you can make crepes that are savory and not sweet, but I had some syrup and nothing else to do to make them savory. So I thought, you know what? Maybe it smells way more potent than it tastes. So I cook up some crepes, and I douse them in syrup, and don't have a fork. And I dig in like the Wampa in Empire Strikes Back. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. Man, those were disgusting.
Gives a whole new meaning to the Last Supper.
I don't think the milk came into play much. I think the garlic and herbs butter just overpowered everything.
Some powerful stuff.
Man, it was, I think I got extra strength or something because it was just, one of those meals. Like when you cook a slice of frozen pizza on a pancake griddle where it's just, man, this is not good.
I'm sensing a theme of you and, real fine dining here, Quinn.
Ain't that the truth? Later, a couple days passed, and we had to drive from Baltimore to Chicago. We took the Beantown podcast on the road permanently, moving from our East Coast home at 817 St. Paul Street out here to the Midwest. And everything with the drive went pretty peachy until I got to Indiana. It was probably about 11 a.m. at this point, and Quinn came on the radio, Bohemian Rhapsody to be specific. And you'll recall a section in the middle of that song when Brian May really gets it going with the guitar, and it's da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's a great time to headbang, which is what I was doing as I was driving the U-Haul truck, and on I-90, something like that, 88, I don't know, on Indiana, or in Indiana, 90 or 94, one of those two. Apparently, well, no, here's what happened. So I was driving, I was headbanging, I was in the right lane, as you should be. I noticed a cop behind me, I'm like, fine, whatever, I wasn't speeding, didn't speed the whole drive. The cop pulls up to me in the left, I'm still headbanging, and was almost all the way past me. You know, like you're watching the Daytona 500, the guy almost clears him, but then he pulls all the way back, pulls back behind me, so I knew something was up at this point, but I was feeling confident in myself because I wasn't doing anything wrong, and pulls me over. Two guys come over to my right side window, and they're like, "Yo, we noticed you were, you looking like you were falling asleep there," and I was like, "Oh, I feel pretty good, just trying to get to Chicago." And like, "Where are you coming from?" I was like, "Baltimore." They were like, "Oh, have you watched The Wire?" I was like, season 1. We literally spent the next probably 3 minutes on the highway talking about The Wire. And I just really wanted to go because I was tired and I was close to Chicago. But talked to 2 cops in Indiana about The Wire, and they love it. They said, "Hey, Quinn, you gotta keep going. Season 2, I haven't yet gotten there yet. But for those Indiana State troopers out there listening, I promise I will." Got my license, got my insurance, whatever. Everything's good to go. Made it safely. And, cops in Indiana really like The Wire, I guess. We came out with a new Father's Day song, which is a tradition on the podcast. So we had one in year 2 featuring the Bob Evans in Orlando, where Dad, food poisoning is all you need to know. And this past year 2, we had some mentions of Macy's, although I felt like that Lil Nas song, Old Town Road, there was a lot of like auto-tune and distortion and stuff. So apologies if you can't understand the lyrics. I should probably put them in the YouTube description maybe tomorrow. But we had a fun one there, just me and the guitar. So look out for another Father's Day song this, what is that, second Sunday of June, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
A little bit after that was the NBA draft. And I was, having one of those weeks. I had about 51 weeks / episodes like that this year where I really didn't know what to talk about. And it was getting late in the day. And I asked my friend John Paul Pandowski, who's been on the podcast before, if he wanted to come on. And he said sure. So we got together in an apartment down on Addison Street in Chicago, and we were watching the NBA draft together. And neither one of us really know anything about the NBA, but John Paul knows a lot less than I do about the NBA, which should tell you something about his knowledge. So we had John Paul Pandowski go through the first 7 picks of the NBA draft, give us his profile, strengths, weaknesses, what he liked about him, what he didn't like about him. And if you didn't catch the episode, I do recommend, in particular, going back and listening to this one, because John Paul is just a very funny person in general. And when you get him talking about hoops, there's no telling what's going to happen. Shortly after that, I promised you we'd go fast, and we are. We had Tarek Shahada, who has been mentioned on the podcast already tonight, come on. He hosts the Local Glow podcast, and I think we found him a new guest with that young man, that young rapper who came on. I kept waiting for him to say, you know those super hot fire clips, but I'm not a rapper. So stop rapping at me.
Yeah, that would have been appropriate.
We should get him on the Super Hot Fire show or whatever it's called. We had Tarek come on to talk about his podcast. If you think the Beantown podcast is, as awful and low budget as it gets for podcasts, you'd be right. Tarek Shahada's show, the Local Glow podcast, is on the opposite end of the spectrum. Super high production value. Unlike this show, Tarek takes a lot of pride in his show and has some really interesting guests on as well. If you're interested in the kind of smaller scale Chicago arts scene, from things ranging from music to visual art to spoken word to rappers, you're going to want to go check it out. They are, I don't know, hiatus isn't the right word right now. I don't know if they officially finished season 2, but yeah, go check it out. Maybe the most famous story from year 2 of the podcast, I got catfished. First time, I think, ever. I'll give you a quick recap of the story. I downloaded a new dating app because it was, banned from Tinder, and Bumble is not good for me. Hinge I usually do pretty well, but I was looking to spice up my dating life a little bit. So I get Clover, which I've been getting lots of ads for on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. I download it. It's a Sunday afternoon when I download it. I get a match within like an hour, and it's this girl who looks like her pictures. She's 19, whatever. We start talking, says she's in Chicago from the West Coast for a wedding. I'm like, oh, sorry to hear that. How are you doing? She says, I'm doing okay. My mom's doing really well, though. Here, you want to see? She's in the pool. I was like, this makes no sense. If you listen to the story the original time, this wasn't like a Quinn's being super gullible thing. I knew this was like really off and really strange, so I had no expectations, but it was just interesting enough to where I wanted to keep it going. Yada, yada, yada. We say we're going to meet up for drinks, me and the mom, not this girl. I had been given 2 numbers, daughter and mom, presumably. Go to a bar on Wells Street in Old Town. And the worst part about this story was not being catfished. It was the fact that I had to go an hour down to Old Town on a Sunday night. I probably waited there for like 90 minutes. That's the only time in my life when I've watched the Goldbergs, that show on ABC with Jeff Garlin, because it was playing on the TV. And but I think it's like $3 glasses of wine or something on Sundays. So it wasn't all that bad. But yes, it was a classic catfish. Did some reverse image searching when I got home, and the mom turned out to be Flavia Alessandra, a Brazilian Portuguese-speaking model, an actress who is most well known for her voice work she did in the Portuguese dub of Incredibles 2. So,
wow, what a resume!
What a resume! Yep, Quinn got catfished. It's a classic story. You can go back and listen to it. It was happening on Lollapalooza weekend, so that's early August, I think. Hell of a time. I'm going to skip that one. It's not that exciting. I went... It was just me getting a recliner. There's not that much of a story.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there'd be like a cool interaction or something.
No, the people were normal. They just lived like 2 blocks away. This whole thing was a lot to carry, but
yeah, you put it on your back or something?
Well, when I was already tired by the time I got to street level because they lived on the 3rd floor. So getting it down the stairs was a lot. And then I think that in my mind, what I wanted to do was, haul it all the way up over my head and then rest kind of the seat on my head and walk like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think after getting it down the stairs, I felt like I had the upper body strength to get it over my head. So I ended up just carrying it like you'd think, arms with my arms and kind of bumping your knees against the thing that reclines out. Yeah, my forearms were pretty messed up for about a week after that. But now we have a lazy boy recliner. So let's listen.
That would be good for reclining.
Yeah, lazy boy sales are going up 100%. Let's see what else here. Oh, I went skydiving this fall. That was fun, and I threw
Kudos.
up. Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, it had nothing to do with skydiving and everything to do with the car ride there. I went with one of my friends who works tech at DePaul and is a super nice guy. And this story and any of the subsequent stories, no indictment on him or his personal character, but we went with him and two of his friends, three young Indian American gentlemen, and the driving was tough.
Don't want to stereotype, but
no, 2 hours out to Rochelle, Illinois. Rochelle. And for some reason we decided to, I think just to avoid the toll, I don't know. I would have happily paid it. We took like country roads, like the Lil Nas song, as opposed to I-88. And we were just, honestly, you would like get to a stop sign, stop, accelerate, 90 miles per hour. There's another stop sign in like 5 seconds, slow way down. Yeah, it's like a roller coaster ride for this second hour of that trip. So we get to this skydiving place, and I run to the bathroom, and thank God the stall was unoccupied, and I just let loose. What was wild was I hadn't eaten anything that day because I wasn't quite sure if I should or not. And then the skydiving took a long time, and we didn't get back to Chicago till like 6 p.m. So that was rough. The worst is when you throw up and you can't really like clean your mouth after that. Little bit. Well, it was fun, but there were some interesting moments as well.
pay the price of a little bit of enamel off your teeth for that one, probably.
Yeah, definitely. I had some coffee, which is really good for your enamel. So coffee first, that's what I had. That's mostly what came out. That was a nice brownish color. I was talking to Walt about this a couple hours ago. I spent, unfortunately, about 48 hours in Cleveland. 48 hours, which I'll never get back. But as I was coming back from a walk, and I was walking past Progressive Field, and every year Jason Kipnis, does a shoe toss. Excuse me.
Are you setting records for the most belches on a podcast
There were some
tonight?
potatoes in that one. Jason Kipnis, as like a charity thing, I'm not sure exactly what all's involved with it, but he'll throw some of his game cleats over the gate from inside Progressive Field to the outside, where there are lots and lots of fans waiting, because in Cleveland on a Thursday morning, that's really the best thing there is to do. And so I got to witness that, took a couple pictures, took a video. Don't know much about Jason Kipnis other than the fact that we beat him in the 2016 World Series, but seems like a good guy. Got out of Cleveland. If you're curious, there's a real fun YouTube kind of photo compilation on my channel with some real high-energy guitar music in the back. And my favorite Instagram story I've ever had is a saved story. So you can go to my Instagram page at q.queend, and it's just one photo in the story, but it's a cool little picture I took of a little pup, and set to some fun music. You're gonna want to check it out. We're getting to the end here, I promise. We got about 5 or 6 more bullet points here. Maybe my favorite experience of 2019, of year 2 of the podcast, Gator Watch 2019. Went down to Florida to 2 cities I'd never been before, for the most part, Tallahassee and Gainesville. I was promised by locals that I could see some gators, so I was given some spots in Tallahassee. Did not see any. Didn't even see Rick Scott, so it was just bad across the board. Went down to Gainesville, which is where University of Florida is, and they said, go to Lake Alice, you'll see some there. Nope. Go to this other spot on the edge of campus, you'll see some there. Nope. So eventually I identify some wetlands about 2 or 3 miles south of downtown where I was staying. So I decided to take an afternoon, go run there. It was like 80 degrees. It was pretty hot, pretty sweaty. And I'm running all around these wetlands, and just no gators. And I'm thinking, this is just, why did I come here? I'm worthless. I can't do this anymore. Eventually, towards the end of my time in the wetlands, I run into this park ranger who was a total honey. I mean, we're talking like 24, just graduated college, works for the Park Service, just a all-around babe. And we were watching this turtle give, actually the turtle hadn't given birth yet. It was digging a hole to give birth into, reminiscent of the time I was born. But yeah, I just called St. Anthony's a hole. Like park ranger says, hey, have you seen the gator yet? And my eyes, perked up, my ears opened, and she's pointing over to this dam like half a mile away, said, go over there, you'll find it. And I ran over there, saw the gator. You can also see it on our Instagram story. Some haters have tweeted out at us and said, no, this is fake. It's not true, but I can assure you I did see the gator in all its glory. Had some fun kind of pond scum hanging out on its back, and he was just out there basking in the sun. Second time you said basking today. So that was Gator Watch. That was definitely the highlight of my time.
But you didn't get a date out of it?
Didn't get a date. Nope. I can't do long distance. And also she was out of my league. It's like if we were in the same league, then I got relegated, then I got relegated again, and then I retired. That's kind of the difference between us. Oh, well. Talked about this a little bit, and I won't spend much time talking about it, but I guess I'll throw this just out of curiosity to you, Walt. Do you know if you've ever been to Gate 35X at Reagan Airport in D.C.?
Pretty sure I haven't. In fact, I'm not even sure if I have ever been to Reagan. I've been to Dulles. I've been to BWI. It's possible I've been to Reagan, but I'm not even sure, so I doubt it.
Yeah, it's, Reagan is smaller than you would expect. But, you're just walking down and the numbers are going up into the 10s, 20s, 30s, normal gates, whatever. But there's a 35, I think it's 35X. It might be 35S. I don't remember which one it is. But sounds like, the iPhone that's going to come out in 4 years here. You have to go down these escalators into the basement to get to this gate. So I go down there. I'm not too worried about it. It's like Cleveland down there. It's just never seen the light of day, an absolute hellhole, like St. Anthony's Hospital or something. There is probably 5 or 6 gates down there, and there's seating for about half of one of them, and it's just chaos. You have to get on a bus out of that gate to get to your plane, and I was held up for some reason. I don't remember why. They hadn't given... one of those stupid things where you buy it online, you book it online like normal, but you're not given a seat. And I remember I went up to the gate person. I was like, hey, don't have a seat. They said, get it at the gate. Said, all right, you're going to have to wait until everyone shows up. And at this point, I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to get, I guess, not bumped because apparently I didn't have a seat, but I don't know why I didn't have a seat.
Well, you don't want to be like 34B either.
No, I don't want any of that. And I didn't want to be at gate 35X at DCA, I'll tell you that much. So I'm the last person to get on this bus, and it was crammed. I had a bag in the front of the bus, a bag in the back of the bus. My boxers were over on the other side of the bus. It was wild. Eventually, we got there, and the rest of the story is history. But if you ever find yourself at gate 35X in Reagan, just watch out, because...
don't say he didn't warn you.
Yeah, it was not fun. We're close to the end here. Our 100th episode happened in... either the last week of November or first week of December. I don't recall which. But I did it coming off of, I still had it, tonsillitis. And if you remember that episode because it was only about a month and a half ago. It sounded pretty rough. It was a tough one to get through. I had tonsillitis for the second straight year, almost exactly 365 days apart, which is scary. If you ever get tonsillitis... I don't really know what to tell you because it sucks. But I had like 103-degree fever and went to the urgent care. They couldn't do anything for me. It was painful. The short story is I was at work and started to feel really feverish. But I had a focus group on snack foods that night for like 140, and I didn't want to let that slip. So I stuck around, did the focus group. It was my first ever focus group where we get to taste things. And when you got really bad tonsillitis and 104-degree fever and you're tasting spicy popcorn, wow, I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. That was bad. You know, Patty Blagojevich was on that show. Hashtag free Blagojevich.
Really? She was on that?
Yeah.
Wow.
She was, you know, like America's first lady for a couple months there. Better than the one we have now.
Hey, be best.
What did the back of her shirt say? I don't care, do you?
Yeah, I think it was I don't really care, do you?
But, like, man, got us talking, I guess. I don't know if that's the point. We did our Home for the Holidays Part 1 episode with some friends and guests of the podcast, long overdue. Hadn't been on in a long time. Ryan, Austin English, and Kristen English came on the podcast. That was really exciting to have them on. I can't really tell you what we talked about because I don't remember, but it was like an hour-long episode. A lot of Tim Allen talk and home improvement, and I just remember they were talking about the finale, and Kristen thought it went one way, and then I gave them like a 30-second rundown of what actually happened. So I showed them 2 weeks ago, and this is the last thing I have here before we get to the answer to that trivia question. I didn't forget about you. We did our shocking, raw, emotional interview, Mom Goes to Prison. It's really torn our family apart, but I think this is the first step in the healing process. Jane spoke out for the first time since leaving the state penitentiary, and it was really I think it was a good thing, not only for the Furness family, it was a good thing for America for that to come out. So if you liked the Gayle King R. Kelly interview, you're really going to like Mom Goes to Prison. It was just a little bit more emotional. All right, that was a little taste of what year 2 was like. So maybe a little bit less travel than year 1, maybe a little bit less outlandish, but still lots of fun things and some fun stories. And this was interesting for me to revisit. Walt, what were 1 or 2 of your favorite moments from year 2? And it could be either year 2 AD or year 2 of the podcast.
Man, that's good. Lot to think about. Well, I'm gonna start by ribbing you a little bit and ask if you want to, tell everybody out there, what maybe you thought was a pretty good moment for me that happened in the last couple weeks of the year. Maybe involving some kind of extended family competition, perhaps.
So, you all know the game Dominion, and Walt cleaned our clocks. So I gotta say
that wasn't where I was going with that, but
well, one thing we didn't mention in our year 2 recap was, and I'll say thanks to Hunter Bolin, fantasy football commissioner, for coming on our show back in mid-August, I suppose, and giving us our fantasy football kind of preview. We should go back and listen to that, see how he did. But all right, I'll give it to you. Congratulations, Hunter Bolin. He won our league this year. He went 14-1. So that was mighty impressive. And Walt won our league too.
Yeah, thanks for that high praise. Yeah, a lot of good ground covered here tonight. I'm trying to think of other things that were stand out to me. I enjoyed getting to make some repeat appearances on the podcast this year. I feel like I'm on a hot streak. Finished out 2019 and started this year strong with a couple of close performances here. So,
what about year 2 AD?
Year 2 AD. Ooh, good year. Isn't that like the year that supposedly the Magi finally made it
to
the house?
I don't know what took those sons of bitches so long.
Yeah, well, I think they were coming from the east.
Probably using Apple Maps.
Oh, yeah. I think that was back when it was like Apple 3.1 or something.
Yeah. No 35X.
Yeah. So, a lot of people think that, they've got their accurate nativity scenes. You got your 3 wise men, Melchizedek, Shinoa and Jacuzzi. But, obviously they weren't there the night of the birth. Took them a little bit longer, whether it was Apple Maps, whether it was, I don't know. They probably had to do a lot of packing because they seem like they're pretty rich guys, so they had a lot of stuff to bring with them. So maybe it was that. So I think of that. That stands out to me, 82. What else? There was, the Romans were a big deal back then, I guess. If you take world history in the kind of context that we grew up in, that's about all you learn about it at that time. So, that I'm sure there were a lot of other great things happening. Maybe, in the Americas, maybe in Africa, maybe in Asia. And I say this all tongue in cheek, but you really focus pretty heavily on the Romans. Remember there was a class called like Ancient Civilizations or something, and it was just Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Yeah. They totally blew off Mali, They totally blew off ancient China. There was no talk of the Iroquois. So, yeah, I don't know. Education system these days, man.
Yep. When you were talking about the year 82, I'm looking forward to, and maybe with modern technology, we'll live to see this. When you get to the year 8032, and you say the full thing, 80, or I said 8032, 8082, 8082, it sounds like you're Drew Brees doing a snap count or something.
Yeah, well,
8082.
Whatever he was doing today, it didn't cut it.
No, it did not. 80, what if you did 80, 88, 88, 80, 80, 88?
I think you're programming right now.
You know a little C+, don't you?
Well, I took a C++ class at Rock Valley College back in the day.
I'll teach you everything you need to know.
Yeah, well, it sort of helped lay the groundwork a little bit because I later took a class in Python, which I've also forgotten most of. I should remember more of that. But, yeah, it's just interesting stuff. I feel like it's something that I had to spend a lot more time with to get really competent. But, it's a big part of it is just learning to think the way that computers think, so to speak, to kind of anthropomorphize them. It's different than the way we tend to think usually as humans. So, got to get your Spock on, I think.
I like that. Get your Spock on. It is minute 82 of the podcast, which means traditionally it's time to reveal our trivia answer for this week, as always happens in minute 82 of our podcast. So, as a quick reminder for the 1.5 people who made it this far on the podcast, I'm talking about Matt Fiedler and maybe the cast of Tiptoes.
Tiny Tiptoes.
All right, let's get with it here. No, it's all right. I'm making no money off of these ads. And I'm sorry if that's a surprise for people to hear after I've been reading them for like over a year, but I don't get paid. As Matt Kirby used to say, getting paid, getting laid. Neither of which is
extremely ironic.
Tonight's trivia question was from 2010 to 2019, there were 38 films released that grossed over $1 billion. This one has the shortest name / title by character count. All right, drum roll time. The answer is Joker.
Very recent.
Starring that one guy from...
Mark Wahlberg?
No. It's got... his brother was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. River Phoenix's brother. So, Joker.
Whatever his name is.
Walt, you haven't seen it yet. So
no, I would like to. Don't spoil it, but I'll get around to it eventually, just like all the other several thousand movies that I say that about.
Probably my favorite movie with a dancing montage on the stairs to a Gary Glitter song. That's good stuff. Any parting thoughts here, Walt? Whether it be concerning the Red Sea or the Holy See or Anthony Hopkins.
Whether you part your hair left or right.
Yeah.
Or center. We don't discriminate here at the Beantown Podcast.
Could be regarding partings or not, but the floor is yours.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it, Quinn. Thanks again for having me on. It was a pleasure, as always, and I feel like we had a pretty good time here, even though it went both about twice as long and 3 times as short as we thought it might. So if you made it this far, click that subscribe button, and because obviously you're the kind of person who wants this content delivered to you all the time. And Quinn comes out with a new episode every week, so just do it. We'll wait. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening. I don't really have anything else to plug except for go Vikes. Skol. We'll be heading on to San Francisco. I'm resting on my laurels right now from my Super Bowl victory in fantasy football. So far, 2020 is off to a pretty good start.
Yep, those mock drafts are almost open, and you're going to want to practice. And apparently we're all taking Miles Sanders top 5 now. So
that's what I've heard. I'm not convinced yet.
Well, you don't have to worry about that because you're not going to be picking top 5. Okay. Thank you to Quentin Tarantino for coming on the podcast. Thank you to Walt for giving us that nice little introduction. That's just going to about wrap it up for year 2. If you've never listened to the song Wrap It Up, it's Elton John and George Michael, and it's got some great falsetto. I'm reading Elton John's biography right now. It's called Me. Thank you to sister of the podcast, Abby Furness, for the Christmas gift. And I'm just glad I can say Christmas gift again. From all of us here at Beantown Podcast Year 2, thanks for tuning in. We'll be coming at you next week with our Year 3 debut. And we'll be talking about, I don't know. We'll figure out who starred in that movie Joker. And we'll kind of go from there.
That's a good starting spot.
All right, everyone, have a great weekend, whenever you listen to this. Year 3 coming up next. We'll check in on you. It's like those people who say milk versus milk.
Milk.
Well, we will check in on you later.